I'd like to introduce our opening keynote speaker today. Minister Jeff Radebe is Minister in the Presidency for Planning, Performance, Monitoring and Evaluation and Administration. It's a very long business card, it really is. He served as the Minister of Public Works of South Africa until June 1999. He has the ear of the President, ladies and gentlemen, who in turn has his ear. He's an important and critical component of government. Jeff Radebe, it's always good to see you, sir. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Jeremy. The Chief Executive Officer of Old Mutual Wealth, Mr. Andrew Bradley, fellow speakers this morning and the days to come, more especially the next generation of leaders who are present here today, and all distinguished guests and South Africans. Thank you very much for inviting me to share some thoughts with you on this very important subject of leadership. But first of all, I would like to pay tribute to Old Mutual for this foresight of starting the Tomorrow's Leaders program, which is currently on its 9th year. Investing in leadership development is as important today as it was when this program was launched 9 years ago. Our National Development Plan, the NDP, which charts the way towards our 2030 vision, identifies leadership as one of the critical ingredients that will ensure that the promise of our Constitution becomes a lived experience for each and every one of us. The basic requirement of the National Development Plan is that leaders provide clear direction to ensure that by 2030, we live in a South Africa that has progressed so significantly from the one that we inherited in 1994, and where these changes are felt by each and every South African in equal measure. The NDP sets a very high standard of leadership. The question that confronts all of us is, will we have that kind of leaders that will ensure that all the goals set out in all the chapters of this plan are met? The subject of leadership is often contested, and it is, in my view, best studied by discussing those who are recognized as great leaders. And during my talk this morning, I will advance a much broader view of leadership in the hope that we all recognize ourselves as leaders, or in the absence of that, we must acknowledge the virtues that we require to become leaders. Everybody agrees that leadership is very important. We accept without questioning the proposition that good leadership is what makes societies function well and deliver the benefits to its population. So strong is our belief in the centrality of leadership that when order breaks down and the situation that we are used to is disturbed, we blame it on poor leadership. We all know of schools that are well run, that produce good results, and have disciplined learners and committed teachers. We know of businesses that are both profitable and treat their workers and customers with respect. In many instances, what sets one school apart from another is not how much money it has, but the quality of its leaders. And what makes companies win Employer of Choice awards is the caliber of leaders they have and the organizational culture that they promote. Ladies and gentlemen, in history, there are leaders who had a vision for the betterment of their countries and their people, and they worked very hard to realize it. Their firm conviction was so strong that they managed to convince others of their vision. Allow me to cite a few examples. The most obvious and world-renowned leader, is one that has inspired all of us, our icon, President Mandela. Together with his colleagues and comrades, he fought for the liberation against the brutal apartheid regime, and he won. And as we all know, it was a bitter and protracted struggle with many setbacks, but what kept them going was that strong sense of justice, that strong sense of belief that a better, a fairer, and more equal society was the only acceptable outcome. Deng Xiaoping was a Chinese revolutionary and a statesman. He led his country through far-reaching market economy reforms. He opened China to foreign investment and the global market. He encouraged private competition. He is regarded as the founding father of modern China, having pioneered reforms that made China the leading economy that it is today. On the other side of the globe, we know of Rosa Parks, who is a very fascinating historical figure, an unlikely leader who was employed as a seamstress at a department store. When she refused to move to the back of the bus to give way to a white passenger in Alabama on the 1st of December 1955, she demonstrated leadership of a different kind. Her subsequent arrest by local police sparked a collective and a sustained community response, which led the United States Supreme Court to outlaw racial segregation on public buses in Alabama. The United States Congress called her the First Lady of Civil Rights and the mother of the freedom movement. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 are among the laws that were enacted as a result of the civil rights movement, of which Rosa Parks was an integral part and a leader. And these are the women and men who, at a very young age, forced themselves into the history books. They did not set out to be leaders. Their acts of courage were fueled by the simple and strict adherence to their beliefs in a better and more just future for their fellow citizens. And today, we look up to them. There are many others like them who, unfortunately, did not live to see the fruit of their struggles. They include Solomon Kalushi Mahlangu, who was hanged here in South Africa in 1979 by the apartheid government. When he was being led to the gallows in Pretoria, he said those famous words, "My blood will nourish the tree that will bear the fruit of freedom. Tell my people that I love them. They must continue the fight." The other is Patrice Lumumba, the Congolese icon and independence leader who was deposed in a coup and later assassinated. But what is common about each of these polka leaders is that they were incredibly young when they undertook the actions that made them the famous figures that they are today. They did not seek fame. They were ordinary folk driven by a very strong belief in justice. They had a vision of a better South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, it is appropriate to pause and ask you to reflect. What drives you? What is your vision? Great leaders are found in various disciplines, as Jeremy has just highlighted. In sports, think of Lucas Radebe, who went to Leeds United Football Club in the United Kingdom, from the then dusty streets of Deep Kloof in Soweto to play the game he so passionately loves. 10 years later, he was the most loved and respected player by the whole community. He had obtained the club, he had captained Leeds United, he had won the FIFA Fair Play Award in 2002, and was being sought after by many big European teams, including Manchester United, AC Milan, and Roma. Think about Bruce Fordyce, the greatest long-distance runner of all times. Many in this audience would have grown up watching in awe as he ran up and down the flowing hills of the Natal Midlands and the Valley of the Thousand Hills. He holds the record of winning the most number of Comrades marathons, having won it 9 times, and is affectionately known as the king of the Comrades Marathon. For those here who participate in marathons, you'll understand how grueling that 90 kilometers race is, and while just completing the race is an incredible feat, winning it 9 times takes a great determination. By the time Peter Makubane took that picture of a white girl sitting on a bench written Europeans only, and her black minder sitting on a rock behind her because they could not sit on the same bench, he had been practicing with his camera for many years. Reflecting on the years as a photographer in apartheid South Africa, Makubane said, "I did not want to leave the country to find another life. I was going to stay and fight with my camera as my gun. I did not want to kill anyone, though. I wanted to kill apartheid. I was arrested many times, and the police would beat the hell out of me. They fractured my nose once because I refused to expose my film and ruin my images. In 1974, they arrested me and I was put in solitary confinement for 586 days. What stands out about these great women and men is that in order to reach the heights that they did, they persevered despite the obstacles that they faced and despite the effort required to achieve their goals. The lesson is that it is very important to believe in what you do and to face disappointments without giving up. Whether in sport, literature, or photography, it takes time to master the art and become a top achiever. Talent alone is not enough. You have to practice and refine your skill over time. There is a book written by Malcolm Gladwell, which is titled Outliers, where he has studied incredible successful people who have reached the top of their game, such as Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft. What he found was that people who became leaders in their fields spent a great deal of time practicing their skills, about 10,000 hours, in fact. Leaders of tomorrow. Closer to home, a young man from Umtata in the Eastern Cape called Siyabulela Xuza is South Africa's youngest innovator. He's an energy engineer with Harvard University degree to his name that has a passion for harnessing the power of the sun for clean, affordable energy. He conducted research geared towards making cheaper solar cells and assess the commercial viability of solar technologies. Sia, as he is affectionately known, began experimenting with rocket fuels in his own mother's kitchen, almost blowing it up at one point. But his passion turned into a serious science project that culminated in him developing a cheaper, safer rocket fuel. Believe it or not, NASA's affiliated Lincoln Laboratory named a planet after him, Planet 23182, which was discovered in 2000. It is now known as Siyakuza. When we go back in history, or study the lives of contemporary leaders across all sectors, a few lessons are obvious. Great leaders put the lives and interests of others above their own. Leadership requires sacrifice, requires commitment, requires conviction, hence many hours of hard work. Being a good leader is not the same as being rich and famous. In fact, those who became great leaders may have become famous along the way, but that was not their intention. Many great leaders reached the heights they attained because they were very hard on themselves and did not expect others to do what they themselves were not to do. They responded to the challenge of their time. In other words, they sought to solve problems. Their passion started at a very young age and got refined along the way with many hours of practice, hours of exertion. It is this last point that I would like to emphasize today as I draw towards my conclusion. To be a leader who treats others with respect, it's something you have to practice over time. To be a leader who nurtures and supports others is something you have to consciously think about and keep on doing repeatedly. To be a leader is something to have to commit to and practice consciously. To be a leader, you have to be prepared to learn from your own successes, from your own failures as well, and from the examples of others. In conclusion, our icon, President Mandela's generation, will always be remembered for fighting for justice, for fighting for freedom against the brutal and corrupt apartheid regime. Upon achieving that goal, they set about building strong institutions to ensure that the democratic gains are never reversed. It is therefore important that we continue to take a conscious view to protect, to solidify those institutions of constitutional democracy. And this is the task of our leaders, as well as the next generation, such as those that the Tomorrow's Leaders program aims to nurture. I would like to challenge you, as future leaders, to think hard about what I've raised with you this morning. Are you up to the task of pursuing your vision, of overcoming the obstacles in your path? Will you have the determination to put those hours to hone in your talents to become the best? My appeal to you is that your focus must include the creation of a society in which there is a shared prosperity. And this challenge requires leaders whose focus extends beyond achieving good quarterly results, meeting bonus targets. It requires leaders who are able to take a broad, long-term view that can place the interest of others above your own. The vision of the National Development Plan is very clear. It needs leaders who will make it achievable. And I thank you.
Minister Jeff Radebe, thank you very much indeed. I'm so glad, sir, that you referenced the Comrades Marathon. I can say emphatically, ladies and gentlemen, there is no truth to the rumor that Minister Radebe and myself will be running the Comrades Marathon this year. In fact, it would take us both 10,000 hours to actually run it, so we're not going to do that. I would also just like to pay tribute today to our sign language colleagues that are with us today. If you didn't know, today is National Sign Language Day. You're all welcome on the stage, and thank you very much indeed.